everybody, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. Today's video is also, I hope, going to be an interesting one, maybe an enjoyable one, because I am continuing talking about the Count of Monte Cristo, but today we're going to talk about the characters in this book. And characters, as you know, are like my favorite part in the book. I pretty much read books for its characters. I like seeing like character development or just some interesting people or like, you know, interesting situations. So that's why this video is going to be, for me personally, an interesting one, because I just want to talk about my favorite characters in the Count of Monte Cristo. Now, the Count of Monte Cristo, with this book, you can criticize it for its characters. Like, it's not ideal, I would say. A lot of these characters, not all of them, but a lot of characters here are pretty much one-dimensional. A lot of this, like, they're either good or they're either bad. And like there isn't like any particular in between. Like if it's a bad person, it's a terrible person. There is nothing good about him or her. And then if it's a good character, then it's just an angel. There are a few exceptions, which I will talk about. Now, as for my favorite characters, I cannot rank them in the order, like this is first place, this is second place. I do have like two characters who are unquestionably on the first place for me. Like they would take the first place, both of them together, because I cannot choose between the two of them. But the rest of the characters I'm going to talk about today are pretty much on the same level, I would say. And yeah, so with no further ado, let's begin. I will talk about my absolute favorite characters in the end of the video, and I feel like it's not going to be a surprise because they're pretty much everybody's favorite characters. So if you have read the book, you can guess. I have a strong feeling that your favorite characters are the same. Surprisingly enough, I cannot say that Edmond Dantès in this book is my favorite character. Like I cannot put them on this list of my favorite characters, because even though he is one of those exceptions when you cannot say that he is a good person or you cannot say that he is a bad person. He has been done wrong. He has been done a terrible thing too, and of course it changes his character. And this is the good thing about the character of Edmond Dantès, is that it is changing. You meet him as one person, then in the middle of the book he is a completely different person, and then in the end he is a different person once again. So he goes through these changes through the book, and this is something I loved seeing. For me personally, I would love to see more of, a little bit more shown of him changing from this beautiful, naive, pure boy into this cold-minded and calculating man who can do anything. Obviously you can see part of that in the prison, and you can see this like kind of breaking point when kind of the process began, but then you do not see the whole process, which I would love to see more of. But then in the very end of the novel, when his character changes once again, I thought that point, that second breaking point for him was done very well. So the thing that I enjoyed about the Count of Monte Cristo is the changing of his character, the development of his character throughout the book, and he has done like a huge journey in terms of his spiritual development, in terms of his just personal development as a person. So yeah, this is something I loved about Edmond Dantès, but like I said, I cannot say that I love him. In the biggest part of the book, like pretty much, I don't know, like this big chunk, he would be this calculating and cold and ever so powerful man, which to me just doesn't feel very realistic. It feels like a book character, it feels like a movie character. So I cannot say that I took him very seriously in this part, throughout this part of the book. It was hugely enjoyable, don't get me wrong, it was hugely enjoyable to read about him, and I was cheering for him because I was so angry with the people who did him wrong. I was so angry with the people who denounced him, and I was just craving this revenge for them along with Edmond. I feel like I've gone through this kind of through the same kind of development journey as Edmond Dantès has gone through. Well, obviously in not as dramatic manner, in a much softer version, but I feel like I've learned similar lesson that Edmond has learned in this book, so that's what I also enjoyed. So this is Edmond Dantès. There is the character of Albert. I will not tell you like who he is in relation to Edmond, who like he is in the story, but I just want to say that Albert is also one of those characters who appears in the novel as one person, and by the end of the novel he is a totally different person. In the beginning of the book he felt to me like this a little bit stupid naive son of his mother. Like in Russian we have this expression, we call it mother's son, and it doesn't have a good connotation. It means that like the boy is very much attached to his mother. It means that he like only follows her advice, that he has no free will of his own, he doesn't know how to make his own decisions, he's like completely irresponsible, his mom does everything for him. So that's how Albert felt in the beginning of the book, like this mama's boy, you know, who is always taken care of, who has always had enough money, who has always had a lot of pleasure in his life, and that's actually who he was. But then again he suffers. All the characters who develop in this novel, they go through a lot of suffering. I feel like this book has this religious context to it, Christian context, and like Christianity, Christian belief is one of the themes in this novel. And of course, according to Christianity, suffering is what brings people closer to God. Suffering is what elevates people. Albert was one of those characters who has gone through quite a bit of suffering in this novel, and his character really was elevated. He really developed into a beautiful, I feel like he's going to be a great man, because we don't see like a lot of him in the end, but the book does give you a promise that he is going to be a great man. And I loved seeing this development in him, because like I said in the beginning of the book, I really didn't think much of him. He was just like, he was more like a clown to me in the beginning of the book because of his behavior. Like if you have read, you understand what I'm talking about, right? He really was a little bit like a clown in the beginning, but then in the end he becomes a wonderful man. After Albert, I want to talk about Eugénie. Eugénie is also one of those characters who just inspire love in you. Even though you really don't see much of her in the book, especially in the beginning, all that you see of Eugénie is just her playing piano and other people talking about her. Like, for example, Eugénie was Albert's fiancée. I'm not spoiling you anything by saying that. Eugénie was Albert's fiancée. However, he doesn't love her. It's just an arranged marriage by their parents because they think that it's going to be a good match and it's going to be good business for both of the families. Young people don't really love each other. Eugénie is a great character because she is actually interested in women, and again in the beginning it is not very much shown. In the beginning it's hinted at because of how she is described. Again, Albert talks about her and Albert describes her to Count of Monte Cristo, and he says that he doesn't see her as a woman. He says that like he cannot see her as a wife. He said like, I can imagine her as my mistress. She would be an interesting mistress to have because she is just, you know, different from all the ladies. However, he just cannot bring himself to seeing her as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, because he sees a lot of masculinity in her. Her features, she is a beautiful girl, but her features are quite masculine the way he describes them. Her character is very decisive, is very strong. She is not afraid to speak her mind. She is very educated and intelligent, and that's also what makes Albert feel kind of threatened by her, I guess. Yeah, Eugénie is a very interesting character. Unfortunately, you do not see much of her, but in the end of the book there will be a very wonderful scene with her and her father, and you can see that Eugénie is also quite a calculating character. She doesn't care for social conventions. I will not talk about like the concrete situation, but you can tell that she really couldn't care less what people think. She couldn't care less what her father wants. If she can do it, she will, but by the end of the day she will have her way. And Eugénie is the lesbian character in the book, because as you know, as I have already mentioned often, this book does represents female-female relationship, and so Eugénie is the one part of this female-female relationship, and it becomes like particularly obvious and present by the end of the book. And after like in that episode, Eugénie just blossomed. Like I said in the beginning, I really didn't think much of her, because you don't see much of her, you don't know much of her. But then in that one part, I just realized how wonderful a character she is, and now I feel so sad, because I would love to see more of her and her love interest, this other girl, who was actually her like piano teacher. So yeah, I would love to see more of them. Unfortunately, it's not gonna happen, but yeah, I loved Eugénie. She is just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful character. Then there is Villefort. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name correctly. I am sorry. I will just pronounce the way I pronounced it to myself when I was reading. So Villefort. He is the crown prosecutor. Well, in the beginning of the book he is deputy crown prosecutor, and then later on in the book he becomes the crown prosecutor. His character is interesting one, like a really interesting one. He is of course a villain in the book. He is one of the people who has done Edmond wrong. He is one of the people who played a big part in imprisoning Edmond for 14 years in the prison. But Villefort, he is one of the complex characters. He, of course, like I said, he is a villain, and he's also very calculating, and he does what is profitable and beneficial for him. But then you get to see him in his family. Again, in the beginning he is not very much concerned in the family business, in the family situation, but then again in the end of the book, when something starts happening to his family, you can see that if he might not love his wife, he might not be very affectionate towards his wife, but he does love his children. He is not a good father. He, like, you know, he is not the father who would spend time with his children. He is not the father who would dedicate his time to bringing them up. But then when terrible things start happening to them, it does hurt him. And then you can see that he does love them in his very strange, in his very weird way. He does love his children. And that's what made Villefort, maybe that's what made me feel sorry for him in the end of the book. I really felt sorry for him. You can also see that he loves his father, again in a very strange and weird way, but he respects his father, and at least I felt that way, that he respected his father, that he had some kind of filial love towards the man, and just respect. Even though he was perfectly able of hiding it and like just kind of forgetting about it when he needed to. Again, because he mostly does what is beneficial to him. And again, he is not a good son, he is not. But he does have this understanding for his father, and he does have some kind of respect for the man. And I think he did love him. I think he did love him. I think he doesn't take this love very seriously. I think he doesn't place this feeling very highly. He puts his interests and his career on the first place, and everything comes after that. And even though he has this feeling of love, he doesn't pay much importance to that. So that's how I felt about Villefort. But I really feel like he's a very interesting character, and I think like he was one of those villains who was done well, because actually in the end of the book I felt compassion towards him. Because two other villains in the novel, they're pretty plain. They are the bad guys. They're these calculating guys, they're these envious guys who just want more and more and more. They're greedy and they cannot stop, and they were pretty plain. Villefort was different. And I loved it about him. Then we have Villefort's wife, Madame Villefort. Again, I found her a fascinating character. Again, she is similar to Villefort in her calculations and in the cold heart that she has for pretty much everybody except her son. She loves her son, and she would do literally everything for him. And again, because of when you first meet her, you really do not like her, you hate her, because she is one of the villains again. But then, by the end of the story, again I felt compassion towards her. Again, because it was shown that she is a mother, and this love for her son was this redeeming quality for me. Of course, she has done terrible things, but again I felt compassion towards her by the end of the book. I couldn't help it. I just couldn't help it. I felt sorry for her, and I couldn't hate her by the end of the book. So I thought she was also a very interesting character. There are some more characters which I will not be mentioning now, because I don't want this video to be very long. Those other characters, they play important part in the book, but in my opinion they are pretty plain. Like, they're either very good, very noble, and there isn't much development in their character. Like, for example, Maximilian, Valentine, even though I really enjoyed their relationship, in my opinion they were wonderful. They were like these angels in the beginning, and they stay angels, and they stayed these angels. So there wasn't really much development with them. So I cannot say I really enjoyed their characters. They weren't particularly interesting for me, even though their story was interesting. But as characters, I cannot say that they're interesting characters for me. Also one more character whom I just have to mention because I love him is Morel, the father. Morel the father. I just love the man. You see very little of him, and of course he doesn't have super much character development, but he does go from quite a bit of sorrow and struggle, and he is practically on the brink of his torments. But he is just such a noble character. He is just such a loving man, such kind man, and I just loved him along with Edmond, because you can see that Edmond, he really loves the man, and he feels very grateful to him, and you feel grateful to him along with Edmond. Again, cannot say there was much character development with that man, but again, we meet him as a grown-up man, and we leave him as a grown-up man. So he is who he is, even though there was quite a bit of struggle. But I just love the man. I just love the man himself, so I had to mention him here. And now off to my two favorite characters in the novel, who take the first place together because I cannot separate them. It is Abbe Faria and Valentine's grandfather. I honestly don't know how to pronounce his name, so Nortilier. I am so sorry if I mispronounce, but I will just write their names here. These two characters are not related to each other in no way. Abbe Faria is the priest, is another convict whom Edmond meets in prison, and Edmond calls him my second father. He says that his biological father gave him life, but Epiphania gave him understanding, and so he considers him his second father. And when you read the book, I will not tell you much, because I just want you to discover it for yourself. But seeing the man in this just the most terrifying of situations, and how he behaves, what he does, what kind of person he stays, is just so incredibly impressive. It is so incredibly impressive. And like I mentioned in my video where I talked about 10 interesting facts about the Count of Monte Cristo, which I will link up here if you want to watch, Epiphania is based on a real person, a real Epiphania. And that man was also in solitary confinement in that prison, Chateau d'If, I'm not sure how to say it. So he was in the same prison, and he was also a priest, he was also a scholar, and he did the same thing even as Epiphania in the book did. I will not tell you because, like I said, I don't want to spoil it for you, but when you read the novel, I am 100% sure you will be impressed by Epiphania. And then we have also Valentine's grandfather, so Nortelier. That's how I say it, I'm sorry. We meet him first in the very beginning of the novel, because he is also the father of the crown prosecutors, of the Villefort. We meet him as one person who is this just very intelligent, very, you can say, sly person, because he is active in politics, and he is a supporter of the Napoleon. He is actually on the other side of the Villefort, because Villefort, he is on nobody's side. Villefort just wants his career to thrive, so he is on whatever side which is currently in the power. But yeah, when we meet his father is on the other side from his son. And you already see that the man is very impressive. He becomes even more impressive in the latter part of the book, because we see him in a completely different situation. He is not as independent. He's like completely not independent anymore. Again, I will not spoil it to you, but he is completely dependent on his son at this point, like, and his family. But even again, he's in a terrifying state in his life, but how he preserves his mind, how he behaves, what he's still capable of doing, how he doesn't despair, how dearly he loves his granddaughter, how with respect and even with love he treats his servant, whom he actually considers as a friend already, because this servant was his servant throughout his whole life. So seeing this relationship with people around him, seeing what he's still capable of doing, it's insane what he can still do. It's crazy how he can change events in people's lives. I was so impressed with him. So I just had to put him along with Epiphania, because both of them are just super impressive characters. So this was it. This is the video of my favorite characters in the Count of Monte Cristo. I can not say like I like them as people. It's more of I like seeing I think they're interesting characters, you know? I think they're fascinating characters. That's what I mean. Let me know in the comments if you have read Count of Monte Cristo. Let me know in the comments which characters were your favorite characters. I'm pretty sure that maybe your most favorite characters will be the same, right? Epiphania and Nortelier. But maybe not. Maybe you have something different. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I will see you very soon in my next video in my Count of Monte Cristo series. I hope you are enjoying the series also, by the way. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. I hope you're reading good books and enjoying them, and I will see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much. Bye.